Hello everyone. Sorry about how long that took. YouTube, when I live stream and I'm ready to hit start stream, it will show me what should be on the screen, what you guys are seeing. And today it wasn't. It was just showing the thumbnail of the live stream, and I thought that maybe my software wasn't connecting with the live stream. So I just took a chance and I just hit go live anyway. And so that's why I was asking everybody what they were seeing on their screen, because I'm like, I don't even know if it's working. So thankfully it was. So yeah, we'll get right to everything. Let me exit out of that, because I usually go to the chat to see what's going on. I don't even know if this is. There we go. That's better. All right, so yeah, I always mute the music before I start a live stream, because the music is copyrighted. So if I can talk over it and stuff and make noise, that makes it so I don't usually get a copyright claim or anything on it. So that's why I usually only have the music on when I'm talking. But yeah, so good to see you all again. That pigeon guy says, any chance I could get some of that tea as well? Yeah, I wish I could share it all with you. You know, it's kind of funny because I go to the store, I get new milk. Sometimes I get oat milk, sometimes I get whole milk or something, or, you know, whatever. If I'm cooking, I'll use whole milk. But if I'm, you know, usually if I have tea, I use oat milk because I'm very lactose intolerant to like basically raw milk or whatever. But every time I go to the grocery store, it never lines up with a day that I'm doing one of these tea times, because I don't get the ingredients for the sandwiches I need, because, you know, I'm doing tea like a whole week later, or the milk hasn't lasted. So today I opened the milk carton and it was totally not good to drink. So I'm having Earl Grey without any milk or cream, which is still okay. I just prefer to have what they call a foggy London? Foggy Grey? I forget what they call it. Anyway, it's with it's Earl Grey with milk. But yeah. So Irving Johnson says, "Here we go. No problem. We are here. Awesome." Mr. Golden V says, "I see chocolate hobnob." Yes, definitely. I love those. Pigeon Guy says, "What are those cookie things you got there?" So the chocolate hobnobs, these are English biscuits, basically, or British biscuits, because technically, I think well, no, they are made in England. Okay, never mind. I was thinking of these. These are made in Scotland. These are Scottish shortbread. Sorry, just the name didn't come to my mind. So I got Scottish shortbread, and I got hobnobs with chocolate on them. So I love that. Normally, I would like to have like a sandwich or something with my tea, but for the last year or so, that just my grocery schedule has never aligned with my live streaming schedule, so things don't last until the live stream. Let's see. Just reading some comments here. Going to Queen Mary. Oh, Evan's going to the Queen. Oh, awesome. In the Churchill suite. Nice. That's really cool. Hey, Mark. I saw Skip's Happy Hour was here. Hello, Skip. Or I should say Aaron, but yeah. I say the first name in the username, so okay, so Radio Lover says, "How did getting upgrades work on Queen Mary?" Oh, I saw that question before I started this stream. I don't know, actually. I really don't know. All I know is that it's probably like a hotel or or like an airplane where if they have room to put people in a upgraded area, they would just tell them, they would say, oh, we've upgraded your cabin to something larger, unless you really want to stay where you're at. But I imagine it shouldn't be too much different than a hotel or an airplane where they just tell you at the last minute, oh, we've upgraded you. And, and then it becomes like this, pleasant little surprise. So, but I guess that's basically it. But for everybody else that was wondering what the question was, it started off basically, what the size of third class cabins were. And so I was telling, who was the original Radio Lover? I was telling Radio Lover that that while third class had their own third class cabins, if there wasn't very many first class people traveling on Queen Mary on a certain voyage, then they would install these wooden gates along the corridors of A and B decks. I think maybe even main deck partly, but I think mostly A and B deck. And if they have available cabins in the very far forward end, they would have let some of the third class upgrade into those cabins. And then same thing for the stern end of A and B decks. Again, if there wasn't very many first class people traveling, then they would install gates over there to allow second class to upgrade into first class cabins. So that's how it worked. And so, it's actually pretty interesting, but I wonder if any of those wooden gates are still left on Queen Mary somewhere, maybe in the archives or something, but you can still see the bronze little hook holder things in the corridor bulkheads, where the gate would have basically hung onto the bulkhead. And, still there to this day. Pretty cool. Weather today is good. It's cold, partly cloudy. Pretty much the way I like it. The sun's out right now, so my room is exceptionally bright. Skips Happy Hour says, do we have an update on the demolition of the Queen Mary Village? I heard they are starting soon. I heard that they are starting soon. And in fact, what I do know is, so if you were to drive to exit the Queen Mary parking lot, there's this main driveway, and then there's a steel overhead bridge. And they recently removed that bridge, I'm guessing to get big equipment in and out of the area, particularly for demolition. Or maybe they're just getting rid of it because they're preparing to build that amphitheater, which they said the amphitheater, which for now is temporary, will be open this September. So I'm thinking that either way, the village should be starting demolition any month now. It could be this month, April, it could be May. But what I do know is it has to be done by the time they open the amphitheater in September, because that amphitheater is going to take up a lot of parking spaces, and they need to offset that with the demolition of the village, so that way they can add more parking to the parking lot. So I'm betting it's going to happen within the next 3 months, the demolition of the village. And then as for the demolition of the submarine, there's still no word on that yet. That could happen closer to the end of the year, or it could happen before September also, just so that way it's not, the submarine isn't such a blight on the image of the Queen Mary. That much I'm not sure, but the village should be done by September. Yeah. Ocean Liner Lover says, can we talk about what they did to Queen Mary's windows right above the promenade deck during the hotel reconversion? They ruined it. They ruined it. I don't think they ruined it. I like what they did to those windows because it helps to make the forward sun deck area look a little taller and whatnot. And then plus, in that forward sun deck area, all there was during when the ship was in service, that forward sun deck area was just private cabins for third-party employees, the people that didn't work for Cunard, who did work on the ship. And so they lived there. So it was just cabins. But today, it's a really big, like, room. It's beautifully decorated in Edwardian style, which doesn't match the Queen Mary, but it is beautifully decorated in Edwardian style. So it does look nice. But that room did need bigger windows in order to showcase the bow of the ship and, you know, the view of the mountains in the background. You know, I was actually just having a conversation the other day with, well, basically he's like the Titanic guy, Bill Sauter, and he's, you know, you've probably seen him on documentaries and things. I was having a conversation with him about the ship in general and how the things that, like, as history lovers, there is a sense of like, well, you know, I want to see the ship preserved how she was in 1936, right? But what we were talking about was the practicality of the ship needing to be, you know, suitable for a modern, you know, experience in terms of, well, no, that's the wrong wording. The suitability of the ship as a tourist attraction in the year 2025. There does need to be some allowances. There needs to be some things that are just not original, so that way it can function better. You know, no one's going to rent out that big room that I was just talking about, the Edwardian room. They're not going to rent it out if they can't even see through the windows. You know, if the view is not even there, they won't rent it out, and the ship therefore won't make money. So there does need to be some things the ship can make money off of. Now, I'm of the opinion that Promenade Deck, almost every public room on Promenade Deck should be open to visitors. I feel that Promenade Deck is the main center of activity on the ship, or at least it should be. And at the moment, they do use the main lounge on Promenade Deck for some special events, but for the most part, unless you're taking a tour or you're attending a special event, that room is kept closed. Same thing with the first class smoking room on Promenade Deck. Unless you're attending a special function or taking a tour, that room is closed. Or with the second class smoking room, also on Promenade Deck, way aft, unless you're taking a tour, that room is closed. So my whole thing is everything that involves entertainment, lounging, tourism, shopping, dining, most of that stuff should be on Promenade Deck because that's where the hubbub should be. And then other decks on the ship can be devoted to the hotel rooms and then to meeting rooms and things like that. There's plenty of meeting space on the ship. They're not going to run out. I think that sometimes there might be the, you know, management might think, well, you know, we don't want to lose that meeting space because, I mean, let's face it, the first class smoking room, it's beautiful. If you want to rent that out to like a meeting for a company, like let's say the heads of In-N-Out Burger were like, hey, let's have this meeting in this beautiful room, you can see why management would want to keep it as just a room that can be booked out. But the thing is that there's a lot more spaces on the ship that really can accommodate that sort of thing. I mean, heck, even that sun deck tea room that I was just talking about, they could put meetings in there, but they prioritize the smoking room on Promenade Deck because I guess it's more convenient to get to. I'm not really sure, but it's those things that, you know, I really feel like Promenade Deck should be the space where everything's open, and the other decks are just extra, you know. I know people want to see, you know, the first class restaurant on our deck to be open all the time as well, but that's one of those things where I'm like, you know, it really doesn't need to be. It can be open for tours, it can be open for special events, but Promenade Deck is where everything should be open, for sure. And then, you know, there are like certain areas, like, you know, B Deck Forward, where they have the third class nursery and the synagogue. Those two things should be open and decorated how they used to look, so that way people who walk by and stuff can learn about it, especially if you're on a tour. Second class library on main deck, that should be restored, so that way people walking by can look in. Maybe they could even sell books there. That was an idea that someone else had passed around. So it wasn't even my idea, yeah. So other areas on the ship could be open here and there, but for the most part, the main activity I feel should be promenade deck. But that's the other thing too, is I've heard people talk about Chelsea's Chowder House and Promenade Cafe, how they should move those restaurants out of the starboard promenade. But that's one of those things where I'm kind of like, what? Even though I love that idea, practicality-wise, those are the only two restaurants besides Sir Winston's that offer any kind of view of the city of Long Beach. And the view out those windows is magnificent. People should be dining there. People should be eating there and enjoying that view. I mean, you think about it, like half the tables you get at those restaurants have a view of downtown. There aren't very many restaurants, other than on a ship, where you can get such amazing views. Usually if you're in a restaurant, there's 10 tables along the side that get a good view, and every other table in the restaurant is located in the middle of the room. So, it's one of those things where there should be a balance between what's historical and what's accurate versus what's practical for a modern tourist attraction. So, yeah, that's just kind of like my little opinion on that. I should get started on this tea because the water's going to get cold. Let me see if I can answer a few questions while I'm doing this. Kat says, so those were not curtains. What were not curtains? Class separations. Oh, the class separations in the hallways. No, those were wooden gates. So they had these. I don't think they were very fancy, but they didn't look like just straight up lumber. They were, nicely stained and lacquered, but they were essentially just big wooden gates, and they would just hang them up on the bulkheads, and there was a door that you could pass through it, and there was usually a steward or somebody attending that door to make sure no one passed through it into a first class space. But yeah, there was no curtains. It was just it was a wooden gate. Yeah. Radio Lover says, what was the purpose of a purser's office? Same function as a hotel front desk, essentially. When you go to a hotel, and like an actual hotel, not just a motel, the front desk acts as a place that can check you in and check you out. It also is a place where there's concierge. So a lot of times with a hotel, concierge is usually alongside the front desk. So that's what the purser's office was. It's basically the front desk and concierge of the class on that ship. So yeah. Evan says, I think the demolition of the village is happening on April 2nd. Oh, interesting. Yeah, that would be really good. Pigeon Guy says, I was watching your Queen Mary Lost Places streams a couple days ago. Made me sad to see what happened to the second class library and writing room. It's one of my favorite rooms. Yeah. Yeah. The second class writing room, I hope that one day it can be restored, because most of it's still there, so it wouldn't be difficult to restore it. It wouldn't be that expensive either, because like I said, most of it's still there. It's just behind a door, and piled full of chairs and banqueting tables and stuff. Now the writing room, second class writing room, I don't know that that's ever going to come back, because they use half that space for extra kitchen storage and stuff. And they need that kitchen for the Britannia Salon, which is the second class main lounge. So I don't know that we'll get the writing room back, but, surely the library, second class library could come back. The Ship People says, "Hi Alex, long time no see. What's your opinion on the SS United States situation going on right now?" I have a full video about that I did just a couple weeks ago. It's very well detailed, and it's separated into chapters so you can select what specific opinion you want. So it's a great video. I suggest you check that out. I did it, it was a live stream. So you would just look under the live stream tab on my channel, and it was just a couple weeks ago. You'll see the thumbnail says SS United States on it, or it says we need to talk, but it's about SS United States. You can see the thumbnail. But yeah, that's a great video to watch because it has everything about my opinions on it in full detail. Ronald Miller says, "Hey Alex, great to have a live. Cheers. Do you run your trains?" Not anymore. I still have them. I still have the whole thing set up. It's just that the office that I keep my trains in is now basically a storage room. I'm trying to get it cleared out so that way I can... So that was what I was going to announce today, was some cool information relating to that. But yeah, I need to get that cleared out. The problem is, I just, I would have to buy a storage unit separately from my house, and I can't afford that. So I'm trying to figure out what to do. It's mostly my dad's boxes and things, He keeps a lot of his stuff here, so I don't know. I got to figure things out with that, because I can't even reach the train, really. I mean, I would, because it's a long story. It's a long story, but yeah, I don't run the trains because I can't really get to them. So, yeah. Ozzy says, "Do they still use the potato room on Queen Mary?" No, that area has been removed. The whole C deck area in that spot has been removed, and now today it's part of the overall museum area of the Queen Mary. SMG says, "How would you feel if Queen Elizabeth was like the Queen Mary today in Long Beach?" That would be great. I don't know where it would be located, but I'd visit it. I'd visit the Queen Elizabeth if it was still around. But yeah. Let me get this tea started, because I've honestly waited a long time. I'm trying to catch up with questions, but even though the chat is on slow mode, I can't keep up with it. Let's see here. I just gotta dump out half of this. And then pour in half of this. Cool. Just gotta let that preheat. Sailing Club has a boat shed downstairs and restaurant upstairs. Downstairs has never been changed. Retains mid-century features. Oh, that's really cool. The Pigeon Guy says, "If I visited the Queen Mary and I wasn't able to see the first class lounge or the dining room, I would be very disappointed." Yes, that's something I've tried to tell management over the years, is that, you see, because the general consensus, the general idea is, well, if people want to see these rooms, they should take a tour. That's the general idea. Problem is that I don't feel that, when you buy admission on the ship, I don't feel that you get enough out of it to make the visit worthwhile. Because you're not only spending money, you're spending your time on the ship as well. And so I feel that right now, as things are, there just isn't enough to see and do on the Queen Mary to really make the admission worthwhile. I mean, if you're paying full admission, you're paying $45 per person. Now, if you have a reservation at a restaurant on the Queen Mary, then you get a major... well, actually, I think you get free admission on the ship if you have a reservation. I'm pretty sure you do, because last time I was there, everybody was like, Alex, we have a reservation. You don't have to pay the thing, but I couldn't hear them, so I ended up buying a ticket anyway. But yeah, so if you have a reservation on the Queen Mary, you get free admission, which I think is a good deal, a really good deal. But a lot of people don't know that. A lot of people don't know that you get free admission with a reservation. So they end up paying the $45 to get on the ship. And $45 is a lot to spend. You know, I feel like there should be more to see and do. But also, not just money. So let's just say everybody knew that hack, you know, to make a reservation on the ship, get free admission, right? Even if you knew that hack, you're also spending your time on the ship. And if you get to the ship and you walk around and you're like, you know what, everything's behind doors, everything is locked, there's, you know, all these big, grand, beautiful spaces that everybody keeps telling me to look at, I can't find them because they're behind locked doors. It makes people turn around and go, you know what, there really isn't anything to see or do here, so, you know, maybe we won't visit for a while. Or maybe we won't visit at all. I've had a lot of people tell me, oh, you know, I'm never visiting again because there really is nothing to do there. You know, they feel like they've seen it. You know, and the thing is, they haven't seen it. That's the problem. They haven't seen it. Not everybody wants to take a tour. That's the other thing to consider, too. And you shouldn't punish people for not taking a tour. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, you may want to charge money for a tour to see places like the main lounge. But you shouldn't punish people who don't want to take a tour to see the main lounge. Some of those tours go places that, you know, that are not wheelchair accessible, right? And so what if someone in a wheelchair just wants to see the main lounge on the Queen Mary? You know, unless you have a really nice employee who's willing to unlock that door and show them, they'd have to buy a tour. And on that tour, they can't go places because, you know, they're limited to where they can go. So it's just one of those things where it's like, you know, I really wish there was a better way that they would, you know, do that they would create more things to see and do on the ship. Some of it comes down to budget, you know, so they do need more money, you know, to do that kind of stuff. That much I can understand. But there are certain things where I'm like, you could just, this room is not booked out today. Just open it. Unlock the door, you know, let people walk in and see it, you know. So I understand also that people say, oh, there's vandalism and blah, blah, blah. It's like, they could get volunteer docents, you know. I mean, how is it that you can go to, you know, Segerstrom Hall, which is what do they call it? A play theater, right? How can you go to Segerstrom Hall and you have all these volunteer docents that help you get to your seat, to find your seat, and yet that building makes money. They turn a profit. They just don't pay their docents because the docents are volunteers. Why doesn't the Queen Mary have docents? Why doesn't the Queen Mary have volunteer docents? You know, like, I don't get it. I don't get it, really. You know, volunteer docents could help to create a sense of security that helps, you know, it helps to discourage vandalism on the ship. It doesn't outright stop it. I mean, obviously you would need security guards and stuff to outright stop vandalism, but it deters many would-be vandals from doing stuff. But as it stands, people just walk around the ship and break something off the wall and put it in their pocket. I mean, that's how things are right now. So why are they worried about that on the rest of the ship? You know, why are they worried about that in the main lounge, but not the rest of the ship? It seems a little backwards to me. So, yeah. Let's see here. Just trying to get, somehow the chat got all messed up and now I don't know where I was. Okay, here we go. Chilling in Frozen North says, "Good afternoon, Alex. Hope you're well this afternoon. Is there a particular topic being discussed today?" Yes. There is a main topic, which is basically that... Well, I guess I should just get right into it. Basically, Shiloh and I are designing some really amazing merch. Some great items that... I mean, we were even working on it late into last night, and we have some stuff that I think people are really gonna nerd out about and really love. And it's gonna start with, paper items like bookmarks, postcards, notepads, that kind of thing. But then it'll work its way into other kinds of medium. I mean, not just the typical coffee mugs and shirts and stuff like that. I mean, there will be that eventually. But we have some really great stuff lined up for that we want to sell. And it's going to have to gradually make its way onto the internet because, we have to ease into the business and see how things operate. But yeah, so we have some amazing stuff. And I was just geeking out yesterday at some of the things we were designing. I was like, man, no one's making stuff like this. And no one is really... I don't want to reveal too much. Yeah, no one's making stuff like the stuff we're making. And I'm really excited to do that. So, but there is also another main topic, which is basically... There's a possibility I might be going back to the Queen Mary very soon. Problem is, I don't have the money to do it. So, that's the only thing holding me back right now. What's the time? 1:40? Okay, let's go ahead and put that in. Oops, it's overfilled, I think. I'm going to dump some of that out because that's too full. Yeah, so there is a possibility I could be going back to the Queen Mary. I can't say when because, just like last time, there are people who have some very ill intention towards me that I don't want them to have a heads up as to when I'm going to be there. But yeah, so essentially, a friend of mine who lives in Idaho is going to be driving down to Southern California soon, and he's like, hey, do you want to go down there with me, and spend a week in Southern California? And I was like, that sounds great. And then my other friend was like, hey, I just bought a hotel room because I'm going to be going to Disneyland and a few places, and he goes, you could stay in my hotel room or something like that. He said, I'll make room for you or something like that, whatever that means. So could be a hotel room, could be some other kind of accommodation. I'm not really sure. But, so he's offered that, and I'm like, that's really cool. And then I got my other friend, Chris, who's like, hey, if you're down here, then I'll buy you a Disneyland ticket so you can hang out with a bunch of your friends and stuff at Disneyland. So I was like, that's crazy. And then the rest of the days, besides the days I'm visiting with my friends, at Disneyland and Queen Mary, I'm probably also going to spend on Queen Mary as well. So I think one of those days might be Disneyland, and then the other, I think it's 5 days. Yeah. Then the other 4 days, I'm sorry. I can't count. Then the other 4 days or so will probably be spent on Queen Mary, which is exactly what I need. Because that one day I spent in February, not enough. Not nearly enough time for me to really enjoy myself on the ship. So, yeah, hopefully, fingers crossed, I will be going back to the Queen Mary and spending a couple days on the ship. But yeah, the only thing holding me back is that I really don't have the money for transportation, food, and admission on the ship. So I told my friends, I'm like, it's not really set in stone for me. I might have to cancel. I don't want to, but I might have to cancel because it just doesn't look like it's going to work out, but I'm kind of like crossing my fingers on it. I'm like, maybe something will work out and I'll be able to do it. But I mean, what a great deal, like my friend's like, oh, you don't have to pay for gas or anything. I'll just drive you down. Then my other friend's like, oh, you don't have to pay for a hotel room. I got you covered, and then Chris, offering, to buy me a ticket to Disneyland so I can see a lot of my other friends, especially the Disney fan friends and stuff like that I haven't seen in 5 years. I mean, some of these friends I haven't seen in 5 years, which is just really crazy to me. So, they couldn't make it down to California when I was going in February for Queen Mary, unfortunately. So I am really excited for that. Hopefully everything works out. Let's see here. Pete says, hey Alex, are you into watching past production films or TV episodes shot on Queen Mary? If so, have you ever checked out Goliath Awaits, a 4-hour movie from 1981 about a Queen Mary type liner? I haven't seen Goliath Awaits, and I don't really watch much movies or TV. I just don't have the time, frankly. So I don't know. I haven't seen much of anything, especially anything that was filmed on an ocean liner or even Queen Mary. So yeah, I don't know. It's hard for me to answer because literally I spend every waking minute of the day on this channel. So it's like I just don't have time for anything like that. Mark, yeah, I'm not really looking forward to the update to my phone. I know you probably are, but I'm not. Chris says, hi Alex, if you could go back in time, would you rather be on the maiden voyage of Normandy or the Queen Mary? Oh, obviously Queen Mary. I've said many times, my opinion about Normandy is, it's beautiful. Like a palace is beautiful. No doubt about that. But I wouldn't want to spend the night in a palace. I'd want to spend the night in a place that was very comfy and looked warm and inviting. And for me, that's Queen Mary. Normandy looks just very overly elegant. I would feel extremely out of place on that ship. And it just feels cold and overly grand. I wouldn't want to spend the night on the ship, let alone a whole week. Plus, Normandy was famous for her really bad vibrations. I don't think a lot of people know this because no one seems to mention it. At least not anyone but historians. But people don't seem to talk about it online in forums and stuff. But Normandy's vibrations were far worse than Queen Mary. I mean, it was said that people would be shaken out of their beds on SS Normandy. It was that bad. So no, I definitely would not have wanted to spend, a voyage on SS Normandy on the maiden voyage. I mean, definitely not. It would have to be Queen Mary, because Queen Mary's maiden voyage, yeah, it had things like soot coming out of the funnels, a little bit of vibration in second class, but ultimately it went really smoothly. I mean, the maiden voyage of Queen Mary went so smoothly. And so, yeah, I would rather Queen Mary for sure, especially because Queen Mary's interiors are just so calming and inviting to me. So, yeah, pretty much. Oh, I overbrewed this. Dang it. I knew I was going to forget that. Man, it's probably not going to taste very good. I'll do what I can. Maybe I'll just put extra sugar or something. I don't know. Okay, that's too full. just got to heat this up a little bit. I'm trying to... So Sheila says, hello from Montana. I'm late. I didn't get a notification on YouTube. Just one in my email. Yeah, YouTube's been doing that a lot to people lately. Just not telling them about videos being uploaded or videos. You know, like my friends, when they publish stuff on YouTube, a lot of times I don't get a notification. And I've told YouTube about this, and they go, well, nothing's wrong. Everything on our end looks fine. It's like, yeah, of course everything on your end looks fine, because you're not the ones that are worried about this kind of thing. Sorry, have a little bit of animosity towards YouTube for that. So... let's see here. The ship people says, here's 2 theoreticals I'd like you to speak about. 1, if QE burned and survived, would CY Tung perhaps have resold her or so? And if so, who to? And if not, who would he... Well, that's a long question for my schizophrenia. Still, okay. So, if QE burned and survived, would CY Tung have resold her? I mean, it really depends on how much damage. I mean, you say survived, but how much? You know, like, it really depends on the damage. You know, if it was all the wood interiors burned, but then everything that was steel remained and was not, you know, warped and collapsing, I think he might have kept it and then just continued with the restoration, although starting from the beginning. I don't think he would have sold it. I think he would have kept it. But there was also the chance that he would have sold it for scrap. So I don't think there was any chance that he would have sold it to someone else. I think he would have either sold it for scrap or kept what was left and tried to restore it. But I don't see him wanting to sell it to someone else. I think there was a lot of controversy around CY Tung because there's a lot of people that have this idea that he started the fire for the sake of, you know, insurance money and all that, which he never collected a single dollar of insurance money from that ship. But the thing is that CY Tung really loved that ship. He really, I mean, he loved that ship. I don't know what else to say about it, but he would not have burned the Queen Elizabeth. He saw it as an extremely profitable business venture, because what he wanted to do was to start a floating university program. And if that was never his intention, then yeah, you could say maybe he burned it for the insurance money, but he still ended up spending a ton of money to make that University at Sea program functional. And to this day, it still operates. So you don't burn a place for money that you're not absolutely certain that you're going to get money from, and then go and spend even more money than what it's worth on a brand new ship to replace it. Yeah, that's just not how it works. So he wouldn't have burned the Queen Elizabeth, and he did care deeply about it. I don't think he would have wanted to sell it to anybody else. If anything, he would have tried to restore it, but the ship was just so beyond restoration that he had to scrap it. So, but yeah. And would he still make her a university? Yes, I think he would have. If he could, if the ship was still usable, then yes, he would have continued to make her into a university, because, like I said, he really wanted to start that Semesters at Sea program, which now is a very successful program still runs. So yeah. Kat says there's a Titanic weekend event in April on the Queen Mary. Yes, I heard about that. The Ship People says, number 2, what if QE was bought by another country trying to turn her into something like Queen Mary? And if that were to be the case, who would most likely have gotten it? New York City, but it wouldn't have been it wouldn't have been to turn her into something like Queen Mary. Well, actually, no. Let me rephrase that, because I was thinking about Queen Mary. I wasn't thinking about Queen Elizabeth. The people who brought Queen Elizabeth to Fort Lauderdale, Florida, if anything, they would have been the ones to turn her into an attraction like Queen Mary. But they didn't have the money to. Now, if you're asking what other country would have bought the Queen Mary, I really don't know. I don't think there was any other countries besides... No, as far as I'm aware, only 2 countries were interested in the Queen Elizabeth, and that was the United States and... I don't know. I'm sorry. I don't like answering questions like that because it's way too theoretical. Nothing I say has any grounds in reality. So for me, it's like trying to put together a puzzle with a blindfold on. I can't. It's so theoretical, and I wouldn't even know how to answer that, honestly, because I would need to have books of information in front of me, have a list of things typed out of the scenarios that were playing out in 1968 when the ship was even being auctioned off, for me to go, one of these scenarios is the case. But I'm not as well learned in Queen Elizabeth as I am in Queen Mary, so I can't really say for certain anything, because I really don't know as much about Queen Elizabeth as I know about Queen Mary. But yeah, I wish I could answer that, but it's such a theoretical question, and it's way out there. So, let's see here. Even Battleship New Jersey has people who take stuff off the ship that is rather bad for any museum ship or hotel ship. Yeah. It's like the anti-aircraft gun on Queen Mary. It's like the little sights in the anti-aircraft gun. Someone broke those off a long time ago and probably kept them. It makes me so mad that people would damage property just for their own selfish, needs. Like, I was talking with a bunch of Queen Mary fans the other day about this, about how people just break stuff off sorry, there's a playground next to my apartment, so you're probably hearing kids in the background. So, it makes me really mad that people have just stolen stuff off the Queen Mary over the years. The thing is, if you were to lock me in the Queen Mary archives with nobody watching what I would do in that room with all those artifacts, things I could easily put in my pocket, I wouldn't do anything. I'd probably look around and admire all the historic stuff, but I wouldn't steal a darn thing, not even a tissue paper. Because they do have tissue papers on board the ship from 1967. I wouldn't have even stolen that. I wouldn't steal anything. It's so unethical to do so. Extremely unethical. And if I steal something, that's one less thing that someone in the future can appreciate. So I can't stand that there are people who just peel things right off the ship and walk away with it. And I've had people who have emailed me, dozens and dozens of people who've emailed me, telling me about all the stuff that they were able to just take off the ship. As if I'd be there going, good job, you guys, good job. Like, no. I'm like, I just want to, just shake some sense into them and be like, why did you do that? the audacity that people just email me and tell me, oh, I took this stuff when I was on the ship last time. And I'm just like, what? You know, so sorry. It makes me so mad because it's just like, you're destroying history for someone in the future. And I get it. Some things on the ship have never been seen by the daily visitors that go there. I get it. But that could be something that one day someone could see. Every day those items get older and older. There could be certain things that people have stolen that in 10 years' time will be 100 years old and might finally go into an exhibit on the ship, and people can appreciate it and go, wow, this 100-year-old item is still here. But no, people steal that stuff, so then no one can appreciate it except the one person who selfishly took that thing from the ship. So that's one of those things, I just can't stand it. I just can't stand, you know, theft and stuff like that. Let's see. Oh, the Fat Hat says, hey Alex, it's not really a question about the Queen Mary, but rather the Poseidon. But once they cut the hole in the bottom of the ship, wouldn't the ship start noticeably sinking due to the air escaping? Yeah, it would. I mean, it also depends because I didn't get to see that whole room that they were in. But if they were in a sealed up room, because remember they had to unscrew that big wheel to open the hatch, right? And if that room was sealed on the other end as well, then technically that room would just be isolated and would not contribute to the ship further sinking. But let's just say when they went through that door, they entered a really huge room, really huge room that was what's the word? Important for the buoyancy of the Poseidon. Then yeah, if they cut a hole in there, that would let the air escape and water could come in. But yeah, so it's hard to say. It depends on how sealed up that room was, because essentially that room itself could act like a boat where everything is sealed up, water can't get in that room. So if you cut a hole in the top, there's no way the ship could sink further unless one of the bulkheads ruptured. But yeah, I thought about that too, because when I saw that movie, I was kind of like, wouldn't that have made the ship sink? But yeah. Let's see here. Galilee Kwong says, you didn't buy Magic Key? I guess they're talking about Disneyland. No, I don't live in Southern California. There would be no point in buying a Magic Key unless I lived in Southern California to use it often. I live all the way in Northern Oregon, practically on the border of Washington State. So I live way too far to go to Disneyland very often. In fact, the last time I went to Disneyland was in March of 2020. So that was 5 years ago. Okay. Let's see here. Chris W. says, thanks for answering my question. Most people I ask say Queen Mary over Normandy. Yeah. There's this, I don't blame Normandy fans for loving Normandy so much. It's a beautiful ship for sure. But I mean, that's just what the passengers thought back in the 1930s. They thought Normandy's beautiful, but not a comfortable place to live for, 4 days on the ocean. It just was too much, I think a lot of people lose sight of that because in today's modern age, there is an obsession with living in the fanciest of fancy places. But in the 1930s, there was a significant number of people in society who were very much against the idea of the ultra rich and the ultra fancy and the ultra luxury. It wasn't like the Edwardian era where everybody preferred super fancy stuff. You know, there were originally artists who were hired for the Queen Mary to decorate the ship. Who and I learned this from Bill Sauter as well when I was talking to him. But there were artists who were hired for the Queen Mary, and they were, Cunard expected them to make these grand, beautiful Art Deco pieces. But the artists were like, nah, it's not about the rich and the fancy and the wealthy. It's about the reality of life. And so they would paint things that were kind of like a middle finger to high class society, right? It was modern art at its best, essentially. Some of it didn't look its best, though. But Cunard didn't take very kindly to it because, like I said, it was basically a middle finger to the high class of society. And so Cunard would get rid of those artists wherever they could and replace them with people who were willing to make beautiful Art Deco pieces. The Queen Mary is partly, not just from the artists, but the Queen Mary is partly designed to cater to the less ostentatious of expectations. I'm trying to think of better words for that, but I think that's actually the best way to describe it. Is that Normandy catered to, the most highest class of society, but what they lost sight of, the designers of Normandy, what they lost sight of was that society was changing. It wasn't about being the most, wealthy and rich and fancy looking place. Now it was, what's a place that's more practical, more comfortable, and doesn't treat people like, you can't be here unless you're the fanciest of fancy people. And that was Cunard. So, even though Cunard was technically the most luxurious ocean line service in Britain, for sure, I'm trying to think. In the English-speaking world, it was definitely the most luxurious ocean line company. They were still designing the Queen Mary and Queen Elizabeth to be very practical, beautiful and elegant, but sensible and not over the top. So, and ultimately, it's a design that really worked. I mean, if you really think about it, even into the 1960s, the era of hippies and people against war and people against high society, the 1960s, Queen Mary and Queen Elizabeth were still very much loved for the way that they looked. They were still very sensible for the time. If Normandy had lasted into the 1960s, 1970s, likely 1960s, I don't even think it would have lasted that long. I think by the 1950s, people would have been fed up with Normandy, honestly. People would have just thought that Normandy was way too over the top for the era. This is the era of the space age, the late 1950s, early 1960s, and all that. No one would have wanted to ride aboard SS Normandy. So I think no matter what, SS Normandy was doomed to have a short life. It's just sad that it had a life so short that it didn't even last through the war. So Kat says, I'd rather be rolled out of my bed on Queen Mary than shaken out on Normandy. Ron says, I hope they fix the peeling paint on the third funnel. Eventually they will. The only question is when. They could paint over with patches of paint, but if it's anything like the last time with the funnel, it won't make any difference. I'm just worried that they'll just have to completely redo the funnel all over again, which will cost them so much money that really should be spent on other places on the ship. So it is sad. It is really sad. Mingo says, hey Alex, I just got done with collecting all the Cunard tea set like the ones you have. Oh, nice. I hope you're enjoying it. Take good care of it. Remember not to pour straight up boiling water in the teapot or the the teacups that you gotta slowly bring up the temperature. You know, at the bottom of every one of these tea time streams, I have information for how to care for your tea set. So if you're wondering, you know, like, should I be scrubbing these dishes clean? You know, that kind of thing. I have information on that in the description of every one of these tea time live streams. But yeah, take good care of it, because if you really think about it, you are the custodian of these historical pieces. One day these will land in the hands of someone else, and you want to be the one that's cared for it and not destroyed it. So that's my only little bit of advice to you, because I've seen people destroy these pieces because they were thinking only about the short term, about how long they're going to have it, instead of, you know, the long term. For me, I'm extremely, extremely careful with this, because I know that I want these to outlive me. So, yeah. Chilling the Frozen Oil says, Alex, would a bit of lemon peel help over brewed tea? I think it would if I had lemon peel, but I don't have any lemon in my fridge. So we had a lime yesterday, but we used it. Yeah. I need more groceries. OC Aviation says, are you planning to come and visit the QE2? Oh, no. QE2 is way over in Dubai. I'm never going there. Never. Not that I don't want to see Dubai. Well, not that I don't have a desire to see Dubai, but I'm also not against seeing Dubai. I just have no interest in going there. It's too far, and it's hot. It's a desert. You know, I hate the heat. That's why I moved up north, where it's almost always cold and rainy, because I can't stand the heat. I grew up in Southern California, where it was hot, you know, almost every day of the year except a day in the middle of, you know, January or February. So yeah, I can't stand the heat. So, you know, and QE2 is just so far away. So I don't think I'll ever see QE2. But, you know, I don't know. I'm interested to see what happens to the Queen Mary 2 when that ship retires. I wonder if someone will buy that and convert that into a hotel. I think that ship would actually make for a very good hotel, because it's designed in the most modern of ways compared to, you know, the Queen Mary or the QE2. The Queen Mary 2 is most like a modern hotel, so I hope someone buys it and preserves it and keeps it as a hotel. I think that would be really cool. I'd visit that if it wasn't so far away. Alright, the ship people. See you later, ship people. Sheila says, I'd take plenty of pictures of the things and buy a souvenir. The actual artifacts should be left in place. Yeah, I agree. I don't know, maybe one day I'll donate this tea set back to the Queen Mary. The only reason why I haven't done it yet is because right now the Queen Mary does not have a proper way of cataloging and documenting their inventory of artifacts. So, like for instance, the Smithsonian Museum, they have a computer system, and every one of their historic artifacts is carefully cataloged, so they know exactly where it is and what's gone with it. And if it goes missing, they'll know almost immediately. They'll know. And everything has its place. So they have these beautiful, like, back rooms in their laboratories and stuff where they can keep the artifacts safely when they're not on display. Queen Mary doesn't have that. Queen Mary doesn't have a cataloging system, nothing on computers. Their archives, as they call them, are really just cargo holds piled full of stuff. Let's not beat around the bush about that. It's cargo holds piled full of things. Not even neatly stacked, not even carefully and neatly arranged. It's piled. So that should change. That's one of my biggest concerns. If people say, Alex, what's your biggest concern right now about Queen Mary's artifacts? I'd say it's the fact that they're not cataloged and they're just piled in places where they're not being carefully stored. I mean, for the longest time, the cargo holds had their porthole windows open, so birds would just fly right on in and poop and live in the archives and stuff. It's not like that anymore. I think those windows have been closed ever since new management came in back in 2021 when the new management came in. But even still, as far as I'm aware, there's no cataloging system still for any of that. So anyone with the keys to those cargo holds could just walk right on in, pick something out that they want to keep, and walk away with it. There'd be no way to tell if anything was ever stolen, unless someone who already knows that place by heart goes, that vintage vacuum cleaner is missing, So that's what's really scary, is there's no way to determine when and where someone's going to steal something in the archives. And I don't say that, like, 'cause I know Queen Mary Management might be watching this live stream right now. I know that they watch some of my videos, maybe not all of them, but some of them. And if they're watching right now, they might think, oh, this guy is being so negative. But no, that really is a legitimate concern. I'm not trying to put them down or anything. But I do think it's a high priority thing that they get a computer system in there and catalog everything and then store it properly so it'll last longer. I mean, if you really think about it, in terms of a tourist attraction, each one of those artifacts represents monetary value. And if you want to increase the monetary value of the ship, then you want to preserve those artifacts so that way they maintain their monetary value. There's your financial incentive to get a computer system installed. I know everybody says, well, they need financial incentives to do things. Well, there's your financial incentive. You want to prevent your ship from depreciating in value and instead start appreciating in value. Have you been on the Queen Mary 2 yet? Not yet. I still want to go, but I don't earn enough money to save up for that. So I'm kind of just in this limbo right now, and I'm hoping that the merchandise that I sell soon, I think in the next month or so, we'll start selling the merchandise, because we're still making it, we're still producing it and designing it, but I'm hoping that the merchandise thing really takes off, and I can earn money from that, and then I can use that to go on the Queen Mary 2 trip, because people for years have been wanting to see me go on that trip. I've been wanting to go on that trip for years, and so I'm hoping this merchandise thing fixes that issue. Because right now money is just so tight. And I know it is for a lot of my viewers too. The economies around the world just aren't doing very well right now. So money's tight for everybody. So let's see here. Just reading some comments here. Oh, right, I already read that one. Okay. Here. Oh my gosh, Lachlan, I hope you feel better. Jeez. Chris says, can you buy artifacts on Queen Mary like old cutlery and tea sets? If you mean original stuff or even replica stuff, they don't sell that. So you can buy modern souvenirs, like you can buy tumbler glasses and things, but it's very modern, doesn't look at all like what they had on Queen Mary. But for one thing, you most certainly cannot buy original artifacts on Queen Mary, in case that was your question, because they just don't allow it. But secondly, they don't have replicas either, which I wish they did. I wish they had replicas of all their tea sets, everything, so people can buy it if they really wanted. But at the same time, I also kind of have to think about it and go, how many people really want to buy this stuff? I mean, yeah, there are Queen Mary fans out there who want this stuff. But when you look at the style and you say, oh, this is a tea set, most people will go, really? Usually there's flowers and it's really beautiful and Victorian looking, and you're like, no, but this is an Art Deco tea set. And they're like, oh, okay, And then they're not interested. I know, because I've when I collected this tea set, I was telling everybody I knew about it. I'm like, look at this thing, it's so cool. And I could have gotten the old Victorian stuff off of eBay, but I didn't want to. I saw this stuff, I'm like, this is my personality. Bland. But no, but I joke, but it really does fit my personality. It's not overly flamboyant with flowers and frills and stuff like that. It's very sensible and everything's neat and tidy looking. So I love that about this tea set. But yeah, you have to consider how many people want a tea set that looks like this. Probably only the super fans. That's probably why they don't sell any replicas. Probably just because it just not many people would buy it. But let's see. Jeffrey Charles says, any update on what videos you have in the works? So, yes, the next video I'm working on, which hopefully will be released next week, will be a historical tour of New Orleans. So, I still have all that New Orleans footage that I never put together into any kind of video. And so I'm like, okay, well, here's one video that I want to make. So I'm putting that together. And it'll be a lot like my Queen Mary tour video, where you kind of go from place to place, and there's my narration over it, as well as music. It'll be like that. There might be a few parts of the video where you hear the actual sounds of New Orleans, the ambient stuff, as long as there isn't anything like overly obnoxious in the audio that I might have to cut out. But yeah, so that's the next one. And then after that, I've got several videos lined up that I just haven't been able to work on. But I've got the origins of the history of San Francisco that I've started working on but never completed. And then I have a video on the Queen Mary. It's a really unique idea, so I'm still not sure if I want to say it out loud, because I'm worried that someone else from another YouTube channel is listening and they're like, oh, that's a good idea, and then they try to make that before I can finish my video. But I've got a kind of an interesting idea for the Queen Mary video, like a long documentary kind of thing, but not just a documentary, not just history. It'll be like no, never mind. I don't want to mention it, because like I said, it's a really cool idea that I haven't seen anybody do. So I don't want someone to take my idea and be like, "Oh, I'm going to make that video first." So it's cool, but it will take time. These documentary type videos. See, that's why I was making really short videos for a long time, where I was doing like 15 minutes on a specific topic, right? Like the windows on Queen Mary or something like that. But then people weren't showing up to watch that stuff. They wanted to see the really long-form documentaries. And those documentaries take me months to make. Months and months to make. And so it's like I'm working on them, but it's taking so much time. But thankfully the New Orleans tour video shouldn't take that long, I don't think, because it's mostly just narration over what you're seeing on the screen. And so I'm going to be pointing out a lot of architectural features of the French Quarter that are really interesting, that maybe some people haven't noticed or even known, as well as point out some historical places that have, a good history to them. So, yeah, I think it'll be a good video, and hopefully it'll be a nice long video too. I don't want it to be short. But yeah, I'm putting that together. I've got all that footage. Right now I've got the file open on my computer for putting everything together. So, yeah. Let's see. Kat says they should hire you to catalog and preserve their archives. I would too. I'd love to do that. I'd love to organize all of that and get it going. That's what they need, They really need that. And they need somebody who they can trust to not steal anything. So, I was telling someone that, I was raised with a strong sense of ethics and a strong sense of character. And that's probably why I'm not super successful and rich, to be totally honest. Is because I think people who become really, really rich and famous or something, they cut corners here and there on their ethics, probably, in order to achieve what they need. They must, because there's been so many times in my life where I probably could have made a lot of money doing something, but I didn't want to compromise my ethics doing it. And so I missed opportunities doing that. And I don't regret missing those opportunities. Because like I said, my ethics and my morals mean the most to me. And so, yeah, there are just so many times where I'm like, man, if I just do this one thing, or if I do this the way someone asked me to do it, I'd probably make a ton of money. And and that's why I don't earn very much money. I'm too nice. But I don't regret that. So, let's see. Sheila says they should get volunteers to catalog the artifacts. I don't agree. Because I think the problem with volunteers is you don't know who you can trust, and maybe you can't monitor them all, I don't know. It should be in the hands of very few people who can be monitored. People who already work for the company, and I don't know. I have a feeling that wouldn't be a good idea. But yeah. Plus, the other thing, too, is you never know if the volunteers don't know how to handle artifacts. I've seen people, I have this vintage 1930s wedding dress that belonged to my great-grandmother. And I remember I was showing it to someone once who does dressmaking and stuff like that. They're a fashion designer and all that. And I was like, oh, yeah, I have this dress. You probably love to see it because it's, it's vintage 1930s and whatever. And I showed it to her, and she was, handling it so roughly. I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. I'm like, this is, 80-some-odd years old. This was back when, but I was like, this is 80 years old. You can't just go rough handling this dress. It's already falling apart. And so she was like, I think I know what I'm doing. And I'm like, no, I really don't. And I took the dress out of her hands. I'm like, I really don't think you know what you're doing. Because she was, pulling it apart at the seams. That's how roughly she was handling it. And I was like, what in the world? And then she suggested that I get it dry cleaned. Because, I was like, it probably needs to be cleaned, but I'm worried about how to do that. She's like, oh, just put it, send it to be dry cleaned. I'm like, no. The dry cleaners will not handle this very well. They will destroy this dress. And then they'll have a little sorry note taped to the plastic bag. I was like, what in the world? But yeah, let's see here. Kat says, my favorite modern thing from the Mary is a funnel-shaped mug. It's even tilted like a funnel. Yeah, I saw one of those. I thought that was pretty cool, too. Let's see. Skip's Happy Hour says, looking forward to the New Orleans video. Yeah, I am, too. I hope I get that done, because I've been so busy lately with this merchandise stuff, but I do have to get videos out, because I still rely on my channel for ad revenue, so I'd like to get a video out as soon as possible. I was supposed to have it done yesterday, but this week has been so hectic. We were even supposed to be scheduled to do a we have a guest lined up to do the podcast with us, and so we were originally scheduled to do that with the guest this week, but they were unfortunately very busy. They have a different job, obviously, aside from talking publicly, but they were very busy and they couldn't make it, so it kind of changed around our schedule. They might show up next week to do the podcast, but nevertheless, it really swapped things around, and you know, so I couldn't get that video, the New Orleans video, done this week. So hopefully by the end of next week it'll be on yeah, it'll be up. You know, I don't know what I'm thinking. I'm so out of it. This tea doesn't taste very good because I oversteeped it. So I drink some, but not very good. Very, very bitter. Yeah. Probably after this I'm going to get some coffee and get back to work on that video. Chilling in the Frozen North says, Alex, I'm looking forward to your documentary on San Francisco. She's my native city. Yeah, I'm hoping that I do a good job on that because it's a lot of stuff. When you think about it, like, a documentary that long is like 16 to 20 pages of narration. And there's a lot of information you can pack into 16 pages. And so I'm hoping that I can really fill out the documentary enough that it's worthwhile watching. Because people really like the stuff that's like 45 minutes or longer. And it's very rare when I put out something like a video that long. So yeah, I hope it turns out okay. Let's see here. So I was asked a question that I think does need addressing, but how to address it has been one of the most difficult ways for me to think about. I want people to know, first and foremost, that everything I do on this channel, first of all, stems from my code of ethics and morality. I'm not a vengeful person. If someone makes me mad, I don't find ways to get back at them. That's not who I am. Frankly, you know, if someone makes me mad, I'd just rather just, you know, walk away and do something else, frankly. So, if you've seen me ban people from this channel, I don't do it just on a whim. There are people out there who do that stuff on a whim. But I don't. It takes a lot to offend me. It takes a lot. I mean, really. I mean, you know, I've had people call me all kinds of derogatory names, and I still don't get offended because I'm like, it's just words. It's just words. You know, I wouldn't want to hang out with those people after they called me derogatory things, but, you know, it's just words. But that's just an example. So it takes a lot to offend me. It takes a lot to make me think this is not someone that I want to associate with. You know, it takes a lot. A lot. And when I ban people from this channel, it's not out of retaliation. It's out of the protection of my viewers. Maybe I'm trying to protect them from a bad public image. Maybe I'm trying to protect them from the words that someone may use. You know, maybe they're hurtful words, maybe they're just words that people would disagree with, or maybe they're words that, I don't know, just, it has to be something pretty bad. So I want people to know that I don't ban people on a whim at all. It takes a lot. And I have people on this channel who send me negative comments every single day and I still haven't banned them. You know, so it takes a lot. But there are certain people who I don't associate with anymore that you've probably noticed. You've probably seen it in the last live stream. And I wouldn't ban them from the channel if I didn't think it was absolutely important. Absolutely important. And so I will leave it at that. There's people you've noticed I just don't associate with anymore. And that's why. Because I think it's extremely important to maintain my ethics, my morality, and to protect the viewers, possibly, from any kind of wackiness that might happen from those people. And I think, too, that in the past, people who've been mad at me might say something like, oh, well, Alex just did this for no reason. But I want people to know that I never do anything for no reason. I always have a reason behind things I do. Because I grew up in a world where I was always being told, do this, do that, and people never had a reason for telling me those things. And so I have a reason for everything I do. And I'm always driven by my sense of ethics and my sense of morality. And so I just wanted people to know that. Because I know people have been asking about certain people who don't show up on my channel anymore. And so it's just how I wanted to address that. But I thought it was important to mention it because I've gone so long without mentioning it. I'm normally the kind of person where if there's some kind of drama, I step away from it. I don't get involved. I don't walk willingly into it. And so I hate bringing that stuff up on the channel because I don't like to, as the old saying goes, air the dirty laundry. But yeah, I just wanted people to know that what my mindset is when it comes to people who are banned from my channel, what my mindset is when it comes to people who I don't associate with. It's never out of anger. It's out of a strong sense of what's right and wrong. And so, yeah, that's what I'm going to say about that. But, yeah. Galilei Kwong says, are you interested in going on a long-distance Amtrak trip and making a video on it? I thought about it before, an Amtrak trip, but I don't know because so one of the things was a long time ago when I thought about going down to Southern California to go to the Queen Mary, I thought about taking Amtrak to get down there. It would take a few transfers here and there, but it could be done from where I live. But it would take 36 hours. And I really thought about it. I'm like, I can't afford to buy one of those private rooms. Not a sleeper room necessarily, but they have these private rooms on a train, long-distance train, where it's two chairs that face each other. And it could be converted into a single bed or something like that, but essentially it's two chairs that face each other, and it's just a private room. So that way you don't have to deal with people who are outside that room and who might bother you and stuff. But those are expensive. Last time I checked, and this was during the pandemic, it was like $450 per night. And I was like, holy moly. Because I would need to take a return trip back up. And I'm like, there's no way I could afford that. So yeah, I thought about it, but I'm not sure that I could afford it. But I think, let's just say hypothetically speaking, if I could afford something like that, I think I would. I think I would take a train somewhere and then film it for the channel. Yeah, I think I would, because I think that would be interesting. Ron, don't worry about it. I just wanted you to know because a lot of people have been asking that same question, and so I didn't want to leave people hanging. One of the things I live by is never complain, never explain, because I don't want to bother people with stuff that, they're here to learn about history. They're here to get away from the world, essentially. The world can be a really down... what's the word? A big downer. That's what I meant to say. The world can be a real big downer sometimes. And so they come to this channel to not feel down. And so that's why I try not to talk about it's any kind of silly drama that comes up, you know, because frankly, I should just keep that under a lid or something, you know. It's like, and a lot of it too is, you know, it's stuff that could be avoided, but yeah, it's just, there's been a lot of people, so you're not the only one, there's been a lot of people asking, and I thought, you know, I should probably finally say something, because it's probably not a good image to ban somebody from the channel and then not talk about it. It's particularly because this person was so well known on the channel for a while. So I thought, you know, some people need an explanation. I can't just be completely silent on it. So, but yeah. Oh, thank you, Ron. Diamond says, to join the channel, which one is the best option? That depends on what you want. I will preface it by saying, before you join the channel, you could probably ask the other people who pay for a subscription to the channel. I'm not very active on that. I try to be, but my schedule prevents me from being able to do that. But you do get sometimes early access to things. You know, I would say, honestly, if anything, the most bang for your buck would probably be the lowest tier, which is the regular historian tier, because at least you get, you know, your name put on the end of every video and stuff. But in terms of like new content that's being made just for channel members, that rarely comes out, I'll be totally honest. And I try to get stuff out, but at the same time, it just, the main channel and the free content is the most important thing to me, because that's what's keeping the channel afloat. But occasionally, if there's something that I make and there's a few days before I can release it, I'll release it to the channel members, all of them, early for free access before I publish it to the main public. So I try to do what I can there, but yeah. Chris says, yes, indeed, a few people who wanted to look at my megalodon fossilized teeth, they were handling them not very good, with not very good care. Oh, yeah. That's really cool that you have megalodon teeth. That's really neat. I love fossils. I probably have never mentioned that on this channel, but I love fossils. I don't own any, but... Or do I? Do I own a fossil? Well, I own some pieces of a petrified log. So that's my little claim to fame there. I own some pieces of a petrified log. I got those when I was a little kid. I must have been 5, honestly. And I've kept them all these years. But yeah, so... what was I saying? But yeah, yes, there are people who are like, oh, I'll be real careful with these artifacts, and then they just rough handle them, you know, like, and I have a lot of historic items. Oh, I just remembered one of my friends the other day came over and was like, hey, you know, like, you know, because he likes showing off fossils, and I have old artifacts and things that I've collected over the years. A lot of them have been gifts, honestly. And I have this one item, I'm looking at it right now, but it's way across the room. But it's my friend is Indonesian, and so his, not the friend I was just talking about, but my friend that I used to hang out with at Disneyland, he's Indonesian, and his parents came from Indonesia. They immigrated. I always get confused about those words. But, yeah, so his parents brought with them a lot of Indonesian artifacts, heirlooms passed down for centuries, that kind of thing. And every once in a while, he goes and cleans out his closets and his garage and stuff, and he finds these old artifacts and things, and he really has no room for them, no use for them, and instead of, you know, just giving them away to anybody, he asks me first a lot of times. He's like, hey, do you want this? You know? So... one of these things, was a special ivory fork. And like I said, it was passed down from generation to generation to generation, and he didn't just want to give it away or sell it, especially because you can't legally sell it in the United States. So he gave it to me as a gift, and he was just like, hey, here you go, you know. And it's really cool. It's hand carved. It's absolutely beautiful, and it's one of my most prized possessions. But yeah, I just realized that was one thing I could have shown my fossil friend the other day, because he was like, hey, do you have anything really neat that like nobody else has? And I forgot I have this ivory fork. So, Ron, thank you so much for the donation. Keep up the high hope to return to the Queen Mary again. Thank you so much, Ron. Yeah, I hope I do. It would be very soon, you know, if I did. I hope I do. Because my friends are... I have really great friends, honestly. My friends are really caring people who have big hearts and always want to give, you know. All the time, my friends are always like, hey, do you want me to make you something? Do you want me to buy you something? Do you want me to... They're all really great people, and then they're always offering great emotional support. So I'm very lucky to have the friends that I have, because it's hard to find those kinds of people. But yeah, so the fact that my friend was like, hey, like, I'll drive you down to Southern California because I'm going there anyway, and I'm like, that'd be awesome. And then my other friend was like, I got room in this hotel for you, and and then Chris, he's like, oh, I'll buy you a ticket to Disneyland because he goes there all the time, and a lot of my old Disneyland friends still go to Disneyland, and so I'm like, that's awesome. So I'm really lucky to have friends like that. I really am. So thank you, Ron. Thank you so much. But yeah, well, how long have I been on this live show? Well, an hour and 45 minutes. That's not very long. I should try to eat these. So, the Queen Mary, I think, is... What's really interesting is that the ship has been able to turn so many heads, particularly for the last 2 years. Because for the last 30 years, the ship's popularity has been on decline. I think what really boosted it, though, was the release of the movie Titanic, because, believe it or not, a lot of people look at Queen Mary and they go, oh, it's like Titanic. So there is some popularity there, because then people go, oh, I want to visit Queen Mary because it's the closest thing I've got to Titanic. And management knows that. Management knows that people think that way. They've told me. And so they want to try to make exhibits and things that will really appeal to people in the modern day. Particularly if those exhibits can tell a story. Because that's what really gets modern audiences going, is that, gone is the days when you could just list off a bunch of bullet points of facts and people would just be glued, to the exhibit or to the screen to learn that stuff. Now today people are more nuanced. I know there's a lot of people that say, oh, well, younger audiences just don't care about history. That's true, but that's only because they've never seen something that's entertained them at the same time. Walt Disney coined a term, edutainment. Edutainment. So his idea was we can teach people things through entertainment. And that was a whole new concept back then. Nobody really thought that you could entertain people and educate them at the same time. They thought those things are two very different things. But Walt Disney knew. And so it's the same thing with Queen Mary. For many decades, there's been a difference between education and entertainment. And so I've tried to tell management at Queen Mary, well, there should be some ideas that are generated for ways to entertain people while teaching them something new. And one of those things I'm working on with a friend as well you've probably heard of the Yarrow Project. I can't explain anything about it, but it is a long time project that started off many, many, many years ago. And the idea never quite got anywhere because management kept changing on the ship. Management changed every couple of years. And so in order to even get this idea off the ground, they'd have to reintroduce it to the next management team and to the next. And so for the longest time, they were waiting just to see, everything stabilize for the Queen Mary. And things are finally looking more stable now, especially because the what do you call it? The Olympics are coming. And so things are looking a lot more stable now for the Queen Mary, especially because there's going to be huge budgets coming in for restoration of the ship in time for the Olympics. And so we've got this idea that we think will really turn Queen Mary into a destination tourist attraction. Something that is just so cool that you really don't get to see in very many places. If anywhere at all. I can't think of anywhere that has something like what we're designing. But we would like to present it to people at the Queen Mary and say, look, if you've got a budget for this, this will really turn things around for the ship. This will really make the ship so popular, not just with young people, but with people, in their advancing years even. It's something for everyone. And, unfortunately I can't discuss it because I don't own the project, so I can't really talk about it, but yeah, it's really neat. But it is interesting how the Queen Mary's been able to turn heads these past couple of years, because there's been a new idea, which is, experience this thing like you're stepping back in time. And before it was kind of like, yeah, there was even some of the marketing slogan, like step back in time aboard the Queen Mary, but in reality it was more like, come to this tourist attraction which is old but has, modern amenities and whatever. But now it's more like, how can we make Queen Mary more vintage? How can we make the experience more immersive? And that's what's going on at Queen Mary right now, is the current management is trying to figure out how to make Queen Mary into an immersive experience as opposed to just a tourist attraction where you come and you buy your regular souvenirs and stuff. They're thinking of ways of, how can we make this feel like you're going on a voyage but you just don't quite leave yet? And so I think that's great. I think that's a great thing for the future of the ship. Skip's Happy Hour says, I don't know. To me, she's a magnificent piece of machinery. Just to be able to dive down and learn every aspect is interesting to me. Just the scale of engineering is amazing. Oh, yeah. She is an engineering marvel. I posted on Facebook, I think it was yesterday, that a lot of people know Queen Mary went 32.84 knots in speed because that's what was recorded on her speed trials. But there is a possibility she was even capable of sustaining speeds faster than that, because when they measured that speed on speed trials, what they do is they stand on land and they look out towards the sea and they see the ship coming by land. And what they do is they know how far a mile is from this point to that point, and if the ship makes it from that point to this point within a certain amount of time, they can figure out the average speed the ship was traveling over that measured mile. And so that's how they determined Queen Mary's 32.84 knot speed. And they said, that's her top speed. Well, the thing is that the ship was actually slightly angled towards land when that was happening. And that means that from the perspective of the people on the island, it would have taken slightly longer for the ship to go from point A to point B in that measured mile, from their perspective. So if the ship is coming towards them, it would take slightly longer to get to the other side, you know what I mean? And so it's believed that with the angle of the ship and the way it was moving, that it's possible that the ship was actually traveling over 34 knots in speed. So I was telling people on Facebook, I'm like, it's an interesting little notion to entertain, that there's a possibility that Queen Mary could have recaptured the Blue Ribbon from SS United States, although it would have been very temporary, because everybody knows that on the next voyage from SS United States, they would have just ramped up the speed even more to beyond what Queen Mary could do, and won that Blue Ribbon back permanently. But it's an interesting notion, nevertheless, that Queen Mary could have possibly taken back the Blue Ribbon temporarily from SS United States. And then I guess that would lead to the question of, why wouldn't they try? Why wouldn't they just be like, oh, the old queen can still do it, it's really more about bowing out with dignity, Cunard knew that if they tried to race SS United States, they'd, even if they won the Blue Ribbon back, it'd only be temporary, and it would create such a fuss in the media. People would be like, oh, the Mary won it, oh, the Mary lost it again, and so Cunard would have been like, what, let's just let our old ship bow out with dignity. And they did. I think that Queen Mary lost the Blue Ribbon in a very dignified way, because what happened was the SS United States was passing right by Queen Mary, and of course Captain on Queen Mary had said, everybody look to your, I think it was the port side. So everybody look to the port side, that's the brand new SS United States on its maiden voyage, passing us up, probably hoping to win the Blue Ribbon. And instead of the press going, oh, the old Queen Mary is too old to beat this brand new marvel of a ship, instead of it being like that, it was very much like, very sentimental. Even the captain of the SS United States had said, oh, I wish I knew these words by heart. Oh man, is it in my book? I won't take too long looking it up. If I can't find it immediately, or in a short period of time, then I won't sit here trying to find it. But where's the last page? Nope, that's the wrong chapter. Okay. I think it would be... Okay, so it's this chapter. Let me find information from 1952. Okay. In July 1952, the sleek new American superliner United States, under the command of Commodore Harry Manning, sailed out of New York just behind the Queen Elizabeth for the ship's maiden voyage. The Queen Mary, about the same hour, was sailing from Southampton. At 5 p.m., July 6, 1952, Captain I can never pronounce his name, Gratridge, announced over the ship's loudspeaker, "The SS United States on her maiden voyage is passing to our starboard." The Queen Mary's passengers, mostly Americans, rushed to the starboard rails to watch the shiny new ship steam toward Southampton, 7 miles north of the Queen Mary's path. Captain Gratridge sounded the Queen's horns and ordered her colors dipped in a salute to the new ship. Let me see if I have the... here we go. Captain Manning refused to fly the broom from the mast as a signal of victory when the ship entered Southampton, because he felt the signal, dating back to 1652, when Dutch Admiral Martin Harpertzoon Tromp sailed defiantly up the English Channel after a battle with the British, with only a broom for a mast, which would be an insult to the British, especially, Manning said, since we took the blue riband from such a gallant, lovely lady as the Queen Mary. Isn't that nice? He says, especially because we took the blue ribbon from such a gallant, lovely lady as the Queen Mary. The amount of respect that everyone in the world had for the Queen Mary, even in the face of a modern ship sailing right past her, you know, people still had a sense of, let's not make this into a big deal. You know, like they were like, it's great, you know, SS United States was faster, but you know, let's not be so boisterous in the face of the Queen who just lost her title. So I thought that was a really cool little tidbit. Yeah. Yep, Lachlan. Yeah, you're right. So anyway, folks, it's been 2 hours now. I think that's actually a good little note to leave on, because I think that was such a lovely little message from the captain of SS United States. But yeah, anyway, folks, thank you all so much for joining me. Keep an eye out for my historical tour of New Orleans video. That should be coming out late next week, so probably around Friday, probably around Saturday at latest, hopefully. Yeah, I will see you all next time. Bye-bye, everybody.